Previously on the Seventh Valkyrie, Meridia receives Val's cryptic note threatening the High Commander, but little other information. Understandably thrown by this sudden shift in their plans, what will Meridia's next move be? Find out now on the Seventh Valkyrie. Chapter 20. On a Knife's Edge. The 16th day of winter. After dusk. Meridia. Machine King knows we're hunting. High Commander working with Krona. Your operation, but the traitor dies. Leave signal to meet. The wind blew cold over the new city that night, and if you had had the senses of the truly gifted, you may have heard, shrouded in the darkness of the third-level alleys of the new city, the sound of gloves, clenching and unclenching steadily, over and over and over again. Meridia was not happy. The false wolf had given her nothing other than that note, and a pile of files stolen directly from the central offices of Mandarian Freight. Of course the Machine King would know they were hunting. The false wolf had practically sent up a flare saying as much. Meridia bristled, and had the sky not been full of clouds, she might have been able to see the white of her breath in the air. As it was, she felt the damp, salty sea breeze clinging to her hair, threatening to sink in and crystallize it underneath her night watchman's cap. Leave a signal to meet, as if she hadn't made it clear that she was being watched from all sides. Oh, Meridia had laid the groundwork for an evening escape if she'd had to. Of course she had. All she'd needed to do was hand-carve a panel on her rooftop and succeed on an insane blind jump through the night directly into the briar bushes of the opposite lot. He'd probably have some comment about how that should have been a piece of cake, and it should have been easy to climb up the entire second-level wall and slink along the ridge and drop down into a back alley where she could blend into the night watch with a borrowed uniform. But it hadn't been easy, it was fucking hard, and she fucking hated him. Ugh. Meridia could still feel the brambles sticking into her skin and hair, and blood was starting to run in all the places she had carefully extricated herself from the briar bushes. There would be no way to return to the house discreetly. She'd have to walk in the front door and hope that they just assumed that they had missed something, and the watch would be doubled on her by the next day. This was a one-time thing, but she had done it to meet with him. Fuck. God damn it, why did she partner up with an asshole? Even when she did arrive at the meeting place, the back alley of a previously under construction shop whose owner had passed, she wasn't sure whether she'd slap him, scream at him, pick his brain, or simply stab him through the throat and end this madness once and for all. The documents he'd delivered that morning were shocking, to be sure. The bridge project was a sham. Well, half of a sham. The skeleton frame of the bridge now rose from the river like a body decomposing in reverse. She had seen paintings and rough sketches of the Mandako before, and the scaffolded bones did rise just like the artists had portrayed. But all the laborers on the bridge were soldiers, not construction workers. And it wasn't just a few of them. Damn near all of them, several thousand, maybe getting up into the tens of thousands by her last count, and still more coming, all quartered throughout the city or out on the barges. And that was just in the reports that the false wolf had delivered. As far as Meridia was concerned, every single one of those men who had come from Mandus might as well have been a soldier, and they were all here in secret. The voices of other night watchmen coming down the road sent Meridia veering back into the alleyways, where she pressed up into an alcove while the men passed by. She figured it was better to not test her disguise unless she absolutely needed to. As she set back out, picking out yet another set of brambles from her back where they had burrowed deeper into her coat, she spat, thinking about the false wolf. A few files and he was ready to kill the High Commander? Calling him a traitor, blowing their cover, it was insane. Meridia teased the word a bit. Insane. It certainly fit the false wolf, but in the way a loose-fitting coat did. He was living in the woods, claiming to be the Iron Wolf, chasing after the Machine King with so much determination that he fought his way into both the Edoran and Thwarp sides of the river. I mean, that was pretty insane. But no matter how she chewed it and tried it on him in different directions, the label didn't fully fit. She had seen crazies before. Mandus was full of them. Some were a threat and some were harmless, but none of them had acted with as much lucid purpose as the false wolf had. There was some piece of the puzzle that Meridia was missing, and that really fucking pissed her off. As Meridia made her way up a long staircase between levels, walking with the lazy pace of a bored watchman, she began to try to put the pieces together. Meridia always did her best thinking during exercise, and moving got her mind ticking about the vast puzzle in Reen. Yes, he was drastic and uncertain and a total fucking asshole. He'd shown it, the false wolf had. He had no sense of subtlety. But he wasn't stupid. It was always tempting to just find the most powerful leader you could find and try to beat the truth out of them. Meridia understood that line of thinking at least, but threatening to kill a high commander, calling him a traitor over a few files that showed what, undercover soldiers? Yes, she had known the commander, and he was a hateful bastard, an arrogant son of a bitch, and a totally out-of-touch fool when it came to women and war, or really women in general. But his exploits and loyalty to Edera were unquestionable. Meridia stopped for a second. Maybe loyalty wasn't the right word. In the commander's file, there was a clear pattern of utmost contempt and hatred for any non-Edoran. But in the times after the war, hating Freelanders and loving Edera had become sort of interchangeable. After all, if you wanted to sell out Edera, there was no one to sell Edera out to except for the Thwarps. There were a million crimes that the commander was guilty of, but treason? Treason was a whole other matter entirely, and it just didn't quite fit with all that she knew about the commander. The moon began to peek between the clouds as she emerged onto the 4th level, ducking into the alleys to avoid another confrontation with passing guards, who were arguing about the manliness of fruited spirits. Meridia listened to them go back and forth, and as their voices faded, she slipped back into the shadows, setting her course now along the 4th level to where they had agreed to meet. The false wolf was going to have a lot of explaining to do, and if he... Evening, Meridia. Meridia slid to one knee with her throwing knives at the ready, catching a glimpse of the false wolf lingering in the shadows at the corner of an alleyway. "Scared the shit out of me, Val," she said. "Why are you here?" "They're watching the meeting place. Almost every spot on the wall, too. They've picked up their security." "Well, fuck, do you think? I wonder if it had anything to do with that little stunt you pulled last night." He emerged from the shadows of the alleyway, but his face was dark, clouded by a night watchman's cap and cloak, the same as Meridia. For some reason, that pissed Meridia off. For her, it was borrowing. For him, it was stealing. Regardless of that, the false wolf beckoned her towards the alleyway. "I've got a backup plan." "Well, this backup plan had better include a damn fine explanation," Meridia growled, but began to follow. "If that's what you want most, fine," the false wolf said. As they reached the alleyway, he spoke again. "Stay close to me. 2 night watchmen on patrol won't draw any attention. We can just chat, walk." Meridia had come to the same conclusion and begrudgingly fell into step as the false wolf switched his tone and began to bitch about the weather, the rations in the mess hall, the fact that they were being worked too hard, and about his commanding officer sucked. It was uncanny, and their camouflage was complete. "What, you been listening to the guards in your spare time sneaking around? I swear I heard all these same complaints this morning." Well, it was a little bit of listening, a little bit of having a good memory. Some things don't change. And where exactly are you taking us? She asked. They passed a command post on the wall and continued on past the abandoned storefront where they had originally been scheduled to meet. Church spire, upper side, he said. It's coming up soon. Meridia scanned the city skyline and settled in on their target, a dark old church that rose 4 stories in stone along the outer wall. When Meridia had been younger, most Eterans had worshipped the heroes of the past, those who had brought them from the darkness and forged Etera as they knew it. But today, you were hard-pressed to find anybody who didn't worship at the Temple of the Iron Wolf. It didn't surprise Meridia to see this church, whose front facade lacked the massive wolf iconography, a bit neglected. The stained glass was dusty and a thin layer of grime had formed on the old brick and cobbles. As the false wolf led her, they dipped around the side, where the church met the towering heights of the 4th level's outer wall, and without a word, the false wolf began to scale the stonework between them with ease. Meridia followed cautiously in his footsteps, and as she crested the outside of the spire, denying his patronizing helping hand along the way, she discovered that the false wolf had pretty much taken over the top level of the church. There were signs of the small bell tower's original use as storage. She could see some moth-eaten robes, broken candlesticks, old books, and scrolls that were all gently molding over. But looking more closely, Meridia could see rows of mismatched knives on a table, a single crossbow along with dozens of blue-tipped darts, a large water skin, a tightly bound leather package of dried meat that smelled like herbs, and even a pair of whetstones. The false wolf hung up his night watchman's cloak on a broken candelabra before pulling out a rolled map of the city and laying it out on the table. Where the hell did you get all of this? She asked. I'm assuming you didn't walk up and buy it. No, I did not, he said, scanning the map. He was staring intensely at the center of it, which he'd marked in chalk all over the officers' quarters. There were routes mapped out to and from the area, as well as marks for several different ingress and egress points on the many-story building, including one that looked like it went straight into the ocean from hundreds of feet up. There were also routes planned out into Central Command, out to the sea, up into the hills, and to each of the different offices that Meridia had requested information from. Finally, there was even one leading to Meridia's home. Seeing the false wolf's process was fascinating in its own strange way, but Meridia had bigger fish to fry. What do you know about the officers' quarters? The false wolf asked, eyes still glued to the map. I know that they're surrounded by barracks, which means a constant watch. I know high guards are in there too, and any other light corps on base. How's that other light corps doing, by the way? The one we fought with, the other guy. He might never walk again, Meridia said. I'll send him a gift basket. Anyway, why aren't you living in the Light Corps suites? All of the Light Corps suites were under construction, or filled with mold, or destroyed by fires when I got here. That's a strange coincidence. Pretty sure the commander didn't want to acknowledge me as a full Light Corps member. I didn't feel like fighting it. False Wolf nodded. Well, if these strongholds are like any other Eteran one I've seen, they'll have rising rooftops for visibility, reinforced glass for a Tier 4 or higher X attack, doors made of a stern metal, and they'll all be guarded day and night. Not to mention they'll have a much stricter entry and exit access now, probably with some form of ID. That's all correct, as far as I know. Then I'll need your help to kill the commander. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that part, that little, detail. Well, I wouldn't call it a small detail. They've ramped up protection around the city in the past few days. It's been getting harder to move at night, and it'll be impossible to break into that kind of compound without help. Val, that's not what I was talking about. Now, we could take him out in transit, but that would leave us both out in the open. in broad daylight unless you've got some sort of inside information on his schedule and when he'll be vulnerable, because then... Stop, Val! Want to know what happens next? Join us on Patreon to become a hero of Edera and get early access to episodes along with bonus features, director's commentary, and the full Tab to Archive. You can also find other ways to support us at the links in the description, and we will see you next week.